Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum everyone. Welcome to the monthly lecture series of Center for Peace and Global Studies. Without any delay, we are still waiting for our speaker today. But without any delay, I will invite the Secretary General of the Center for Peace and Global Studies to give the introduction for the center and this lecture series. Shahid Rafi, Dr. Shahid Rafi sir, could you please unmute yourself?
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن في خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف الليل والنهار لآيات لأولي الألباب الذين يذكرون الله قياما وقعودا وعلى جنوبهم يتفكرون في خلق السماوات والأرض ربنا ما خلقت هذا باطلا سبحانك فقنا عذاب النار ربنا إنك من تدخل النار فقد أخزيته وما للظالمين من أنصار ربنا إننا سمعنا مناديا ينادي للإيمان أن آمنوا بربكم فآمنا ربنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار ربنا وآتنا ما وعدتنا على رسلك ولا تخزنا يوم القيامة إنك لا تخلف الميعاد صدق الله العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الكريم. Honorable Professor Dr. Anis Ahmed Sahib, distinguished guests and respected members of academia. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you to this monthly lecture of the monthly online lecture series of Center for Peace and Global Studies. I hope this series will serve as a platform for exchange of views on different topics of social sciences, as well as the ethical aspects of natural sciences, and engage scholars from all over the country and abroad. Our activities are not limited to these online lectures. Rather, we do plan to hold workshops and seminars in collaboration with different universities across the country. But we also have a comprehensive program to hold collaboration with the universities and scholars of other countries outside Pakistan. We are working on initiating online and distance learning certificate courses on different disciplines. We have also published 4 publications recently, and we have planned to publish more publication, and it will be a frequent activity of this center. We will be sharing these publications amongst you, inshallah, very soon. We plan to facilitate scholars in producing textbooks, writing books, and take on other research projects through financial, material, and moral support. Our objectives are also include facilitating students of higher studies in completion of their dissertations on relevant topics in all disciplines of social sciences. I therefore invite all of you to write to us about your proposals and communicate about possibility of joint ventures. We have also planned to personally visit our colleagues at different universities for direct face-to-face consultations and to plan future programs, inshallah. I want to use the privilege of this occasion to introduce Center for Peace and Global Studies shortly. This center, as I mentioned, uh, is a non-political, non-sectarian, non-profit organization. We are working without any biases in the field of academic intercourse. And we do hope that all of you will join us in academic excellence of our beloved country Pakistan as well as the whole Muslim Ummah. Having said that, let me introduce our today's speaker to our respected audience, Professor Anis Ahmed. As you all may know that he is a meritorious professor of comparative religion and ethics. He is the chairman of our Center for Peace and Global Studies. Recently, he is working as Vice Chancellor of Rifa International University, Islamabad. Previously, he served International Islamic University. He is a prominent scholar. He is founder as a number of Dawa organizations and academic institutions within Pakistan and outside. Today, he will be delivering lecture on decolonization of social sciences. I'll invite Professor Dr. Nis Ahmed to please deliver his lecture on the topic. Jazakumullah khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Anisa, could you unmute yourself? Dr. Anisa Ahmed, I think you are still unmute. Could you please unmute yourself?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalam ala khatim al-anbiya. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. I'm honored to meet our colleagues all over the globe who are joining us in this discussion. The purpose is to just open up dialogue on a topic which is perhaps on the mind of many social scientists. I'll not take too long a time. With the help of a few lecture points, I'll try to focus on just few aspects of the subject and will expect many more areas to be explored when I hear responses, questions, and comments from my colleagues who are joining us. First and foremost, the colonization project of the West in order to modernize, liberalize, and civilize the non-European world has been in progress for over 200 years. It's not a matter of recent development. In 18th century, when the European world and a number of adventurers from Europe decided to go out and civilize the world in the name of their own economic designs, this process started. In the post-World War period, several movements for the political liberation emerged in South Asia, Middle East, Far East, and Africa. And you find a number of countries liberating themselves from British, from French, from Italian, from Portuguese colonialism. In 1947, Pakistan got independence from the British rule, but education system it inherited was designed by the British to produce a workforce to serve their interest and also learn about achievements of European nations in science, technology, culture, literature, economy, governance, society, and religion. Therefore, everything that was conveyed in academia by way of teachings, by way of books, by way of lectures, focused on how Europe has been able to make an impact at global level. If we talk about history, then dark ages were those periods when a number of civilizations were blooming. But for European scholars, it was dark age. The Enlightenment and the rise of liberalism and intellectualism, scientific thinking developed only when Europe tried to engage itself with those aspects. Therefore, an integration of knowledge based on knowledge produced in Europe and knowledge based on Oriental values, even by institutions like Anglo-Mohammedan College and University founded by Sir Syed in Aligarh, was not much different. Although the name is Anglo-Mohammedan College and later on University, which also indicates how he tried to merge two areas and how in the whole syllabi of the university, a department of theology was created for Islamic studies, but all disciplines were taught in the same way as they were taught in Europe. The public sector universities were also established to disseminate the knowledge produced in the West. Therefore, whether it was a matter of teaching literature, history, architecture, sociology, psychology, everything was based on that paradigm which was imported or exported from the Western hemisphere. All disciplines in social sciences developed in the West were Eurocentric. Therefore, when they talked about society, society meant what existed in Europe. If they said law, law meant what kind of concept they have about law, which is a result of continuous practice of certain traditions, ways of people, till they assume legal status. Economy means that venture where they are trying to capitalize as entrepreneur and trying to produce products at less cost and gain more profit. Therefore, everything, whether social sciences or even applied sciences, were based on the European understanding of various disciplines, Eurocentrism. Therefore, law, culture, religion, everything, even religion was defined in terms of those ritual and ceremonies which the West thought is religion. Particularly when religion was talked about, it was always considered something anti-rational, something which is based on dogmas, something which is past and no more relevant. Political independence from direct rule of British Empire did not bring intellectual liberation from the Eurocentric epistemic paradigm. the paradigm of knowledge, what is knowledge, what is meant by society, human being, all that was Eurocentric, based on their understanding of human life. Under neo-colonial and civil military power sharing, the dominance of feudal elite led to total dependence on adopted system of the former colonizer. When a number of Muslim countries became liberated, may that be Malaysia, Indonesia, Pakistan, Egypt, Jordan, or in African countries, the countries came under new colonialists, those who were educated and trained by the colonialists as bureaucrats, as army officers, as intellectuals, as lawyers, as businessmen. And they carried with them all that philosophical background or baggage which was given to them by the colonizer. So the difference was, we had brown administrator with white approach and philosophy. I'm sorry to use this word white, but that's how the racist system can be represented in very blunt words. So added to that was the feudals who were nourished and created by the British or by the Dutch or by others for their own benefit. They were given big estates, they were given titles of sir, knights, and consequently it was these feudal elite, civil and military power sharing, which continued this whole heritage of the former colonialist. Next, please. History was written with a view that the Muslim rule was barbaric. It was a tale of power struggle between some major tribes like the Umayyads and Abbasis, and later on the Berbers and others. At the same time, races defined as Arabs, Persian, Turks, and so on and so forth. This history was full of stories of bloodshed. On the contrary, West was projected as a society, as a culture which was rational, which was scientific, which was humanist, balanced, which was civilized, and therefore their triumphs of the West were to be appreciated. Everywhere, in every textbook, what was achieved in science, in technology, in social sciences, concept of development given by Western, mainly European writers, were the basis of understanding that phenomena. Therefore, to achieve development and success, we were advised to look West. And the modern jargon has been best practices, which means what is done in New York and Paris and London. That has to be adopted. And unless that's adopted, Muslims cannot progress. The other aspect was that Muslim history was projected as a history of barbarism, where even some issues were focused, like legal punishments, family law, in that some discriminations were discovered, law of inheritance, which was considered not fair, gender segregation, which was considered a kind of oppression. Such issues were discussed with the understanding that when these are deliberated, ultimately the young mindset of social scientists, chemists, physical scientists, all will be tuned with Western understanding of society, which is essentially a racist approach based on supremacy of a race, supremacy of a region, and a kind of hegemony in the name of globalization. Next, please. Even persons like Sir Sayyid Ahmed Khan, who was supposed to be a very enlightened person, educated person, has used the title of one of his small books, Asbab-e Baghawat-e-Hind, which means for him, the war of liberation by Muslims and others in the subcontinent was a mutiny, a Baghawat. And scholars who are quoted as great Muslim thinkers like Allama Shibli even wrote an article that talks about how the people of subcontinent should learn to live in a loyal manner to the British Crown, because it was a blessing that they came with enlightenment and some new ideas. The ground reality is that knowledge produced by the capitalist imperialist paradigm carries with it a racist and cultural bias and the Eurocentric worldview, which enhances dependency in all strategic matters. The more we apply Western methodology, Western knowledge, the more we become dependent on them. Therefore, if you want to teach law and you are using the well-known textbook of Patton, if you want to explain Patton, what he means by certain concepts in law, whom you will refer? You will refer to someone in Indonesia, in Jordan, in Pakistan, in Nigeria, or you have to go to an author from Britain, from Europe, and try to find out what Patton really means, which means understanding of epistemic aspects, knowledge aspects, understanding of meaning of terms, concepts, because terms stand for concepts. Whatever is to be understood and grasped, its elaboration, its meaning, its context, its application, everything has to be searched in that collection of information which is Eurocentric. Therefore, dependency. You cannot interpret those concepts with your own mind, but you have to take help from those lexicons, from those encyclopedias, from those texts which address those issues in a bit more detailed manner. Next, please. Therefore, decolonization of social sciences means de-Westernization, which means all that has been Westernized. If I'm in Malaysia or in Indonesia or in Jordan or anywhere else, and I talk in fluent English or fluent Dutch or fluent French in Morocco and elsewhere, if my accent is more than a French, then I am considered a more intellectual, a better person, which means it's not only imperialism of economy, but at the same time, thinking patterns and language of communication has been colonized to the extent that in a number of Muslim countries, their own script was changed. Turkey took a lead under Mustafa Kemal. And in one stroke of pen, when the script was changed, it meant that 1,000 years of intellectual history, 1,000 years of achievements, 1,000 years of scientific development, all which was in Turkish language, written in Arabic script or naskh, was outdated, irrelevant. And same applies to Bhasha Malay. Whatever was in Bhasha Malay or Jawi in Indonesia, all that became irrelevant with the change of script. And this was a part of colonization strategy. So when we say de-Westernization, it means revival of that tradition which had treasures of knowledge, but which have been made irrelevant by the so-called project of Eurocentrism and westernization of knowledge. Concepts such as meaning of education. What do we mean by education? Does education mean carrying a diploma, a master's degree, a PhD degree, which means you have a access to micro knowledge based on which your PhD was considered a contribution to academia and knowledge. Besides that micro knowledge, you don't have encyclopedic knowledge. So does education mean micro knowledge and disregard for macro knowledge? What's the meaning of development? Does development mean that you change names of a street in your country from the Share Ibn Khaldun to Chestnut Street, Walnut Street, Churchill Street? If you change that, you are a developed country. You are modern. But if you are naming your streets in the name of your scholars, Ibn Rushd, Ibn Khaldun, Ghazali, and so on and so forth, then what's the meaning of equality? Does it mean mathematical equality? Therefore, if we have 50% workforce in army or in industry, which is male and female, then we are fair? Can every male or every female lift an engine or can lift a crate of ammunition and load it in C-120? Can everyone do it? Does it mean that unless you are equal in numbers, you are a backward country and backward people? What I don't want to go in detail, but what I mean is every single word I'm using here: freedom, empowerment, well-being, mental health, family, society, economic progress, political system, whatever the foundations of law, culture, all these cognitive and emotional intelligence synergies, all these terminologies are used and defined in terms of what comes from the Western heritage. Therefore, decolonization means when we are able to discover different dimensions of meaning of these words, different meaning of these concepts, different backgrounds and applications of these terms, which I'm using here just for example. And this is just a few. There can be dozens and dozens more in every discipline. Just if we take even just psychology or sociology, then in sociology, what do we mean by stratification? What do we mean by development? What do we mean by security? What do we mean by law? Every single term used in sociology or in psychology or elsewhere has a cultural baggage. Even when you invite someone and say that please have food with me this evening, and you say please have supper with me, then supper carries the meaning drawn from that English which recognize biblical words. Now even modern English does not want to have any link with their Bible. Since Bible talked about supper, the word was integrated in English language and used as common word, but it has a history, etymology. Therefore, every single term used in social sciences or other sciences comes with a very clear baggage, very clear link, and consequently, we move in a vicious circle. Whatever in the name of development, enlightenment, progress, modern Islam, postmodern Islam, whatever terms are used, if someone in the West has used the word Islamism, then hundreds of Muslim intellectuals will start using it to show they are well informed about what's happening in the world. If someone used post-Islamism, then Muslims will write books on that and say that post-Islamism is the real phenomena, is the existential reality, and so on and so forth. Which means that our thinking processes, our imagination, our historical baggage, everything has been so deeply influenced, impacted, that we cannot think and see otherwise. Therefore, unless we come out of this cocoon, there cannot be a proper understanding and dissemination of knowledge. Knowledge means when you are exploring new horizons, not a closed paradigm in which everything is packaged. It's packaged by Eurocentrism. You have to follow our norms, our ways. If we greet other person by kissing on cheek, then you must do in the same way. If we shake hand for X seconds, you must do that, or else you are a backward person, uncivilized, coming from a world which do not know how to greet people. Everything, mode of life, even the analysis used in psychology is based on those assumptions which are about human being, human psyche. If human psyche is subject to certain sex drives, then even a very innocent dream has to be interpreted in those terms, which means the whole process of analysis of a personality, of a psychic problem, is done within the framework of that Eurocentric philosophy, which was based on 200 European experiences. The European psychologist had 200 cases. Based on that, he made an assumption. Then he applied in clinical psychology. Now, since they have done it all over the world, whether you are in Indonesia or Turkey or Pakistan, anywhere else, psychologists who are trained and educated in that paradigm, in that approach, they are bound to use those assumptions and apply those in their even clinical treatment, which means whatever we are doing is not based on indigenous problems, personality, concepts, but based on imported ideas, second-hand ideas, and then applying them with pride and honor that we are living a modern age. Next, please. It also means addressing basic human issues of purpose of human existence. On that count, let me raise the question, when we are teaching sociology or psychology, or when we are teaching chemistry, do we have any idea our addressee, the young person who has ambitions to learn, does this person know anything about what has been purpose of human creation, or the person only knows that definition of society which is given by an anthropologist or sociologist in a textbook printed in New York or London? Is the person aware of centrality of family? Family is considered to be a subject to be taught in sociology, or perhaps partially in psychology, when you have family battering or any problems. But without family, can we conceive a culture and civilization? It is family which conveys values, which makes a person conscious of responsibilities, which gives manners, which civilizes the person. If family is gone, and we define family as an understanding between two persons, not even a legal relationship, understanding, then does that lead to a human world or a world of beasts? Therefore, what's the meaning of family? Then social engagement, individualism has taken over all concepts of social engagement. Me, my body, my liberty, my decision. Should I conceive or not? Although I have made a public declaration that I am no more just myself, but I am part of family and linked with a person through a legal and moral public commitment. But all those aspects does not matter. What matters is me. I decide. I'm the judge of everything. That individualism, which is the basis of Western epistemic paradigm, which is the basis of entrepreneurial economy, which is the basis of secular democracy, which is the basis of legal doctrines, if that is not properly understood, critically evaluated, and substituted, can we have a human society? Can fairness mean anything? Therefore, social engagement and then ethical, economic, and political order. What we have is a secular economic and political order, where power-hungry politicians do not care for any ethical principles, where wealth-hungry persons never care for are they fair to provide the labor with proper compensation? Are they aware of the hazards they are creating in environment by their chemical waste? Are they aware of how they are trying to produce products with the chemicals which are not human friendly? Even dress, how many kinds of cloth material is human friendly? All made from chemicals that leads to unknown allergies. Therefore, it's not a matter of human being. It's a matter of economic craze, hunger to have more and more benefit. Countries are declared bankrupt by those who are surviving on the wealth they snatched from these countries. And that is what we call global mechanism of money management. Now, which means that unless an ethical economic order, ethical political order is considered, then our teaching politics economics is essentially an extension of Eurocentric, capitalist, materialistic vision of life, which is filtered, which is manifested in every single word we use in communicating knowledge. Then what are the meaning of human rights? Does human right mean individual deciding for himself or herself how should the person appear and what should a person eat and dress and live? Or human rights means those principles which are universally good for human beings, not for racist regimes, not for power-hungry people, but for those who respect human life, who respect human dignity, who respect human individuality, and so on and so forth. And similarly, in non-racist anthropology and sociology, unfortunately, 99.9% anthropologists have gone with their cameras, with their binoculars to the so-called African bush, so-called underdeveloped Asia, so-called underdeveloped people in Far East. And with their cameras, they take photographs and then they say, here are the people who have kept half body naked, therefore they are heathens, quote unquote. William Howell's book entitled Heathens. Paul Radin, another anthropologist, talking about African soul. People talking about the uncivilized, underdeveloped, undercultured people. Every single photograph taken is interpreted by the anthropologist with a feeling of racist supremacy of the West. Therefore, in the name of civilizing these people, colonialism went and talked to them that we are here to redeem you. It reminds me of Bishop Tito's very famous statement. He was Bishop of South Africa and himself not a white man. He said once that the European evangelist came to us and gave Bible in our hand, and they said, close your eyes and meditate about the Lord. We meditated. When we opened our eyes, Bible was in our hands and our land was in their hands. This is a statement of a person ordained as bishop and who was a victim of this colonization for centuries. But that colonization continues even in countries which claim to have political independence. My concern is, whatever may have taken place, where do we go now? If the social sciences and applied sciences are fully colonized, they are Eurocentric. Every single statement they make speaks volumes about Western understanding of life. Then should we continue and add to it a few ethical and moral teachings and have a manual prescribed in all universities that teachers must talk for 5 minutes about how to be humble and polite to people, while the knowledge we give make them arrogant, make them brutal? How can these two separate domains synergize? Consequently, ethics will remain a separate domain and a domain perhaps relevant when you have free time on weekend, enjoy some golden words, but throughout the working hours, act like an entrepreneur, a scientist, a scholar who is product of this Eurocentric paradigm. Therefore, all these aspects, we need to have a non-racist anthropology, and the meaning of religion and freedom in a multicultural society where people have different cultures and different concepts. What do we mean by religion? Does it mean something personal, which has been said so many times that even many good Muslims believe that religion is their personal matter and not a matter of da'wah, not a matter of sharing, not a matter of amr bil ma'ruf, not a matter of sharing with people what is good for them and good for humanity. They think it's a personal matter. So if a person prays or does not pray, if a person fasts, does not fast, it is personal matter. While in Islam, every single ibadah is based on collectivism, ijtimaiya, on jama'ah. But the meaning of religion, which has been put in our minds from childhood, through media, through education, through practices around society's behavior, everything has reinforced the concept of religion as something personal and something outdated, something which is quite often called spirituality, and that's a personal matter. Next, please. Decolonization of social sciences means end of hegemony of Eurocentrism, rethinking with an independent, critical mind, and creation of a post-modernist epistemic paradigm, and not adding in the existing knowledge a few Islamic concepts. This slide summarizes my whole discussion. Therefore, what I'm trying to share with you is that this hegemony of colonized disciplines, Eurocentric disciplines, has to be questioned, and a rethinking with a critical approach needs to be initiated. That will create a postmodernist knowledge shift, paradigm shift in our understanding. And when we discover that knowledge is not confined to empirical knowledge, but knowledge is a holistic concept. The Quran talks about ilm, which is nafi'. The Quran talks about ilm, which is holistic. It does not classify in terms of this is religious knowledge, this is non-religious knowledge. Even big Muslim universities of the world, they are under a deception of classifying knowledge in two broad areas. One they call knowledge which is based on deen. Second, based on dunya. And Islam does not mean deen and dunya. Islam means same deen in dunya, not in some other domain. Unless dunya is changed based on Islamic values, there is no Islam at all. We cannot have an Islam in Mecca or Medina or Cairo or Istanbul. And all technological development, all social development, economic development is done as advised by Western gurus, because this is dunya. This is shirk. This is polytheism. Therefore, the classification that this is my deen and this is my dunya has no place in the Quran and Sunnah. Consequently, social sciences shall have to realize they cannot divide human being in pigeonholes. A pigeonhole of society, a pigeonhole of law, a pigeonhole of religion and spirituality, a pigeonhole of economy. These pigeonholes with the dividers which are made of steel cannot meet ever. Only make a schizophrenic human being who is divided, who has no unity. While the Islamic contribution to global culture and civilization is, it introduced a human, a society, a cosmos, which is based on unity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, unified human life, unified universe, unified society, unified economy, where you have one single principle of honesty, and not entrepreneurial benefit, but honesty and fairness and equality and adl and justice. When these principles are basis of economy, you have a new economy, not capitalist economy, not socialist economy, not economy which is just based on the hunger of entrepreneur. Therefore, when we talk about postmodernist epistemic paradigm shift, it is not by adding in the textbook a few ayat of the Quran or in the footnote a few ahadith which talk about that subject matter. A textbook on sociology, when it talks about family and gives family means nuclear family, father, husband, and husband, wife, and one or two children, depending on their choice. If that is the definition in textbook, and the Quran says that you have liberty to go and eat in the house of your parent, in the house of your uncle, in the house of your aunt, in the house of your brother, in the house of your sister, in the house of your in-laws, and so on and so forth. And all these are mentioned by name in the Quran. Then what kind of family is defined by the Quran? Nuclear family or extended family? This extended family does not mean joint family. I'm not going in detail again. I'm just trying to illustrate my point that when we say a new approach in sociology, it means the textbook has to redefine family. And by the way, this family is not a monopoly of Islam. I know in Africa, the norm has been a large family. I know even presently in Australia, norm is a large family, not small family. It's only Eurocentric view, which has been because of slavishness of intellectuals in developing countries, that they have adopted, not adapted, adopted all those ideas which come from Eurocentric view of knowledge, and they feel proud when they think they are talking about modernity. It means westernization. The more westernization they see, the more proud they feel about themselves. So what is needed to be done to decolonize is to develop this critical approach and then try to find out what is Islamic concept of knowledge, Islamic epistemology, based on Islamic epistemology, which is drawn from revelation or wahi. Now that has to be the basis of a new discipline. That's why when we say integration of knowledge, it is not just a matter of certain ethical principles, it's a matter of a paradigm shift. It's a matter of redefining human relations, human existence, human society, human economy, human political power sharing from a perspective which is holistic, which is universal, which is not racist, which is not based on Arabs, Turks, or Pakistanis or Malaysians, but which is based on universal Islamic ethical values given by the Quran. And for that matter, I have always maintained that the term Sharia is not a term used for Muslims. The Quran says, we have given to every people before you Sharia. It was same Sharia of don't kill, don't commit adultery, don't tell lies, don't cheat in measurement. This was the Sharia, which is global, which is universal. How can we say that since the Quran says do not cheat and do not lie and do not kill, therefore Muslims must strictly follow it, but non-Muslims can kill as many as they want, cheat as many as they want? Can that be accepted by anyone in senses? Therefore, all Sharia principles are essentially principles for humanity, not for Muslims. So when we talk about integration of knowledge, we are talking about integration of those universal principles which are there for all human beings, irrespective of their color, language, race, ethnicity, geographic origin, and which provide meaning to life. Life becomes meaningful through social engagement, through involvement in human issues, and ultimately, we are able to create a peaceful and just social, political, economic order, or adala ijtimaiya, a collective approach where it is not just a matter of Muslims or non-Muslims, but all human beings living under certain universally accepted and given values by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Next, please. Decolonization of social sciences means rehabilitation of Islamic heritage with full awareness of its complexity and challenges, which means that unless we are fully aware of Islamic heritage, what has been done in terms of interpreting meaning of freedom, meaning of equality, meaning of justice by Muslim scholars, unless we do that, we will not be able to do justice to Islamic understanding. But I say with awareness of complexity and challenges, which means that even many of Muslim scholars cannot be always considered saying what the Quran and Sunnah demands. I don't want to go in details I can name dozens of philosophers who are known in Muslim history as great Muslim thinkers, while their ideas are no different than Greek and Indians, but they carry Muslim names. Therefore, I'm saying with very careful approach and awareness of complexity. It's not a matter of what Ibn Sina says, but a matter of what the Quran and Prophet says. That's what makes Islamic approach universal, not what Ibn Sina says. So they should also know what are the non-variable principles, the Quran and Sunnah, how they apply. And they should also understand what is the larger or wider understanding of Sharia. As I just said a while ago, it is not for Muslims. It is based on universal principles, and therefore it is not a matter of Talibanization, but it's a matter of how global universal values of Sharia can be guide for a new breed of social sciences and applied sciences. Next, please. Decolonization of social sciences means a study of existing human beings and of total human being, which means that I should not reduce human beings to an economic entity as done by economics. I should not reduce human being to a social animal as done by sociology. I should not study human being reduced to certain bundles of libido, desires, and hungers, which is done by, or a bundle of unconsciousness and not consciousness, unconscious behavior. This is the most stark reductionism of these disciplines, which is quite often not fully noticed. And therefore, not a reductionist approach, but an approach which is holistic, where we understand the whole total human being, not just a sex-hungry, crazy mice who is running after a piece of cheese. It is not a rat psychology. It has to be a different psychology. Therefore, we have to get rid of this capitalistic reductionist approach and come up with a holistic approach where total human being is considered with holistic ethical values. Next, please. Integration of knowledge is a creative process based on universal ethical worldview of Islam. It liberates the mind and soul of social scientists from the existing paradigm of colonialism and brings Islamic values, which considers Islamic values as outdated, inferior, and belonging to the domain of religion. Again, many Muslim social scientists and others have been indoctrinated in a way that when we talk about Islamic values, they say it is belong to ilahiyat. This is a matter of religion, and we're not dealing with religion. We are dealing with economics, political science, ground realities. Now, this mindset is based on a division which has been inherited from the paradigm of Eurocentrism. So we have to get rid of this approach, liberate our mind, and at the same time come up with an approach of integration of that knowledge which is based on divine revelation and universal Islamic values. Next, please. Outcomes. Decolonization of social sciences means rediscovery of the Islamic heritage, scholarship and achievement of Muslims, and liberation from the epistemic violence, which I call epistemic violence. Means that it is a knowledge destruction approach and hegemony of Eurocentrism. Integration of knowledge and universal Islamic ethical values in social sciences can lead to a holistic understanding of human situation. It may be anywhere, it may be in Europe, it may be in Africa, it may be in Pakistan. At the same time, in non-sectarian, in non-racist alternative of existing racist imperialist paradigm of knowledge. We need to come out of that. Next, please. And thank you very much. I've tried to cover these points as fast as possible so we can have some time for interaction, inshallah. Thank you very much for hearing.
Jazakumullah khair for a thought-provoking lecture on decolonization of social sciences. We are now open to question and answers. If you could please raise your hand. If you cannot speak, you can write your question in the chat window and I'll be able to read it. Yes, Hashmi Sahab, could you please unmute yourself?
Ji, Assalamu alaikum. Ji, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. First of all, Dr. Sahab, we are all on behalf of us, I mean, this me and my team, I would like to say thank you very much for such a beautiful lecture which you have delivered. And I believe that this is the very voice of Muslims. Jazakallah khair, may Allah give you long life with Iman. And that's all I want to say. And I wish I can talk to you. I took the liberty of talking about my project and I pasted it there. It's not a promotional thing. It's not for myself only. So I request that if you might, we might be able to talk. So thank you very much. I am very thankful. May Allah protect you every step of it.
Thank you. Jazakallah khair.
Okay, we have user Techno. Could you please unmute yourself?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Muhammad Sadi Abdul Qadir from Nigeria, Bauchi State, precisely. Alhamdulillah for the lecture. Prof, may Allah reward you abundantly. It is very nice lecture and thought-provoking. I found it very informative and educative. We would like to be listening more from you, sir. I am a student of psychology, educational psychology, and I can see a lot of concepts which are contradicting to Islamic viewpoint. And there are some also concepts that they are reducing human being as a creator of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To just example you cited in the lecture, like the rat psychology, the cat experiment that is conditioning, classical conditioning and the rest, which we Muslim, we need to come up with a more holistic view of human beings. Thank you, sir. I found it very challenging and I will dwell much on this. Thank you, sir, for the information. And
Jazakallah khair. I will welcome disagreements, please.
Okay, one question from Javed Iqbal. Is there any particular institution of Ummah that has developed this strategy for decolonization? Here, institution means an agreed upon institution that has legitimacy to work, ways and means, and has finances for all the Muslim countries.
Jazakallah for your question. First of all, Islam does not believe in a church authority. Therefore, there is no centralized, authenticated institution which speaks for Islam. Everyone among believers has liberty to do homework, to understand the Quran and Sunnah, and come up with a view. If this view is shared at global level with new technology, and people from Nigeria to Morocco to Indonesia and to New York, they all respond and say that we agree with this, that becomes ijma of the people. But no central authority of church. There is no Vatican. There is no Al-Azhar which declares fatwa and says this is Islam and this not Islam. This concept should be clear. I believe there are many institutions. The institution which has sponsored this talk this morning, the Center for Peace and Global Studies in Islamabad, Pakistan, is committed to it. The Institute of Islamic Thought in Virginia, in the US, and elsewhere, its branches, they are working on it. They are working on redefining basic concepts, and IIIT has published over 200 publications on many issues, and those should be approached. If you want to know more about that, go to website and try to find out, and you will see that there are many challenging issues addressed in those publications. So there are institutions, but I do not think IIIT or any institution can claim we are the authentic institution. All over the world, Muslims have their birthright to come up with various interpretations. And when the Ummah agrees, when scholars agree, that makes something authentic. For example, the understanding of Islam as a movement and not as a ritualistic faith is a consensus. Till modern era, we had a fossilized concept of Islam as confined to just 5 principles or 6 principles, and that was the main teaching given in textbooks. But today, we find Islam is the way of life. Islam addresses issues. So it's not just a matter. And this concept was not by one single person. This was Iqbal, this was Maududi, this was Al-Banna, this was Bin Nabi, this was in Southeast Asia, a number of scholars. This was Nursi in Turkey. This was not one, but many of them came with the concept Islam has to be total way of life. This becomes consensus. But there is no Vatican to declare what Islam means.
Dr. Umar Iqbal Bhatti, could you please unmute yourself?
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
a very interesting talk. There is a slight maybe disagreement as you mentioned about Sir Sayyid Ahmed Khan. What I think is due to the practical circumstances at that time, and maybe he was an official of the government, so he did this took this approach of naming the book Asbab-e-Bagawat-e-Hind. So this is sort of a maybe a political act of from his side. But what I feel is that he was I think so that he was quite understandable, like he was quite excited about the approach that we need to took once the colonization has taken place. For example, if what we see his books like Asadu Sanadid and the translation of Ain Akbari and maybe I will say I will use the word preservation because otherwise we should not have seen that book. And so he tried to preserve the essence of the tahzeeb which was developed by Muslims, or we can say Mughals. And somehow because he was not much supported much, so he was able to made it possible that these books are available to us in some form, maybe not the best form, but there are many the wonders of architecture, for example. They are accessible. They are maybe accessible in the form of knowledge pieces to us. So that's that's why I think he realized at that time that the same the theme of this lecture that has happened, and the practical ways he took, of course, we can disagree and we can disagree with many things, but I think this is that's what has to be done. And as in this lecture, this is focused on social sciences, but it's not what I feel is not only the social sciences, it also the other domain, the technology and sciences which are like hampered or which are like damaged by this approach. So if like a Muslim scholar was working on the same project or on the same like problem, he would have figured out much better alternatives to the solution of the problem. So, but
Thank you very much. I fully appreciate your comment. If you kindly go back to my points, what I said was institutions like Aligarh University. I did not say Sir Syed himself. I only said he was the founder. Sir Syed is the person who opposed British colonialism and who said that we must have a separate concept of two nations and fight against colonialism. I know about that. I'm not saying about anything about him. What I said was institutions like Aligarh University were based on the concept of division of knowledge. This is ilahiyat, this is worldly knowledge. And this has been the main problem. Secondly, I fully agree with you that it's not just a matter of social sciences, but I repeatedly said applied sciences. Everywhere, the notion that empirical reality is ultimate reality is the basis. And this is a wrong assumption. Concept of knowledge in Islam is not epistemology, but revelation. Although revelation does not deny use of empirical methods. Two separate things. One is empiricism, other is use of empirical evidence. The Quran itself calls for empirical evidence again and again and shows that. Does not mean it is calling empiricism as truth and reality. So this is a basic difference conceptually, which should be kept in mind.
Thank you. Ilyasa Yassini, could you please unmute yourself?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much, Prof. Anis. May Allah open the doors for you. I wanted to ask you, you spoke of the universalist ethical Islam. How do we achieve a universal ethical Islam given the different center of powers amongst the Muslims? And when we look at the question of decolonization, we have some powers amongst the Muslims who are pro-decolonization, while on the other hand, we also have Muslims who are probably siding with the colonizers or neo-colonialism system. How then do we attain the whole idea of the universal Islam, which is ethicocentric? Thank you very much.
First of all, when I use the word universal Islamic ethical values, then I refer to those values which are driven from revelation. Revelation tells me I should respect human life. Revelation tells me that I have to be honest in my dealings, in measurement of things. The Quran says use same measures. Does not mean you measure wheat and grain, but also ideas, relations, dealings, everything. So everywhere, universal values are given by the Quran. We cannot say that Muslims should be honest and fair, but let others be as unfair as they want. Therefore, universal values of Islam are universal values of humanity. The problem is Muslims have been born and raised in their own cocoons. They have been told Islam is your religion, quote unquote. While Islam is not just religion, Islam is complete way of life. When they say religion, it means go and make Hajj, give some zakah, have fasting, make prayer. But be unfair to your wife, to your parents, to society. That is how people do. Now, this is a wrong concept of Islam. And this has been there for centuries. Therefore, when we say universal Islamic ethical values, these are values inspired by revelation. But since many people don't believe in Islam, the term we are using is universal Islamic ethical values, which is defined, and values are mentioned whenever we talk about it. Now, how we do it is very simple. You cannot implement any values or concepts with a rod, with a command, with a notification, but you need to disseminate those through a dialogue, talking to people, writing on the subject, sharing that writing, dissemination of knowledge, and that's what is our objective. The center as well as IIIT is engaged in this process for dialogue, for disagreement. So if we are in some places not correct, we will correct ourselves. It's only by this ongoing dialogue that we change. The neo-colonialist is a product of colonialist. If we were colonized in Nigeria, in Malaysia, in Pakistan, and elsewhere, then the colonists came with education system, with his economic system, with his political system. And those who were born in that system, for them it was natural. Therefore, neo-colonialist sometimes was more colonialist than the imperialist. He proved more loyalty to Eurocentrism than the white Eurocentrist, because he was a product of that. Now, it's only when people realize their own shortcoming, their finitude, their reductionist approach, which is open. And our job is to talk about it frankly, fairly, humbly, till our fellow human beings, Muslims or non-Muslim, realize they are living in a world which is reductionist. Reductionist world which has reduced itself to nationalism, to capitalism, to Marxism, to Freudism, to so many isms. We want human beings to liberate their mind from these reductionist ideologies and find out what are universal values on which a new humanity can come into existence.
Dr. Salman Farooq, could you please unmute yourself, and I will request you to be brief because we are running out of time.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
My question is not regarding the decolonization, but it's related to the topic of the social sciences. I just want to ask that in the history that we see that after the Holy Prophet ﷺ, the Muslims have enjoyed their peak time politically as well as academically. And after their decline in academics as well as the politics, the Westerns have come over and they have taken over. But we see that during the Muslims' golden era of their academics, they were not able to develop the social sciences in a way that the Western scholars or the philosophers have developed it. Like we see that we just find the subject of law or to some extent the history that the Muslims have developed to its very peak, especially the law, the fiqh and the usul al-fiqh. But in the other fields of the social sciences, Muslims have done some work, but not so precisely and in the different with the different names of the social sciences, just as anthropology and psychology and so on. So and we believe that someone who is studying Quran, which is the ultimate source of the knowledge, and the mind which is believing in the concept of Tawheed, his understanding, his thinking process is far better than the person who is not having these ideas. So don't you think that despite having these ideas, these aqaids, and the book like Holy Quran, the Muslim scholars, even at their golden era of the academics, they were unable to do what the Western scholars have done without having these original sources of knowledge? Thank you.
If you kindly look into Muslim intellectual history, you will find that Muslims did not leave any single area without contribution. Just take the case of Ibn Khaldun. His Muqaddimah carries a whole portion, large portion on education. And it provides education in philosophy, child psychology, how to pedagogy, and so on and so forth. You look for Ghazali, you look for anyone, and they are persons who provide you separate writings on ilmun nafs and so on and so forth. It is not a matter of Muslims have not addressed. Besides law, I think the great development and achievement of Muslims has been family law, the concept of inheritance, the concept of how family relations are to be developed, and at the same time, concept of society. The society has to be, social responsibility has to be observed through zakat, sadaqat, infaq, a whole system exists. Then social welfare through awqaf, which has existed. The major cities of Muslim world were provided facilities by these awqaf. Waterways in Istanbul were made from awqaf, not by the state. Many other areas, schools and mosques were converted into madaris all over the world. Just travel into Central Asia, you will find every single mosque has attached to it a madrasa, which is a university, and therefore, as soon as colonizer came, the whole heritage was set aside. I said in my brief presentation that if in Turkey you have a script which is not permitting you to read a book written in Naskh or in Arabic script, in Turkish language, but in Arabic script. Same applies to Indonesia and Malaysia. Same is happening in Pakistan, that young people on their tweets, they use Romanized Urdu and they never use script. When you are away from the script, you have set aside Iqbal and Faiz and all those persons which people like to read. This has been one of the weapons of colonization, and because of that, we have not been aware. That's why I said rediscovering Islamic heritage. And again, I said with qualification that not everything is Islamic, although it may carry some aspects of Islam.
Jazakumullah khair. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Professor Anis, for the question answer session. And we have come to the end of this session. I can see that Professor.
If they have some more, they can email those questions to me.
Yes.
I don't mind if there are some questions which are not answered.
Thank you. Professor Umar Kasuli from International Institute of Islamic Thought is the Secretary General. He is with us today. And could I request him to unmute himself and share his thoughts, share the concluding remarks, and end this session with dua.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I greet all our brothers in Pakistan and all over the world who are online listening. I have attended the tail end of the lecture by Prof. Anis. I thank him for a very masterly presentation and answering the questions. And really, this lecture is very important because knowledge and its decolonization are the main challenges that the Ummah is facing today. So Jazakumullah kulla khair, the presenters, the questioners, and those who are participating. I would like to leave you with an anecdote. This is something I heard from Professor Bakari. He is a Kenyan professor of English literature, born in Mombasa. At the time that he told me this, he was teaching in Istanbul, one of the universities, teaching English. He told me that when the British colonized India, that's after they fully occupied the whole country after 1857, they were faced with a civilization that was in some aspects superior to their civilization, because Indians had universities, schools, scholarship. In terms of technology, Indians were producing cloth of higher quality than the cloth from Manchester. You couldn't compare the sari with the cloth that cotton that was coming from Manchester or Liverpool. So the British were wondering, how can we make these people obey us, look up to us? Because they already, and the Indian woman had her cosmetics. She will not buy cosmetics from England. She has her clothes. They have got their books, their schools. How will they look up to us, fear us, respect us? They said, well, we need to create a class through which to rule this huge country. We need a class that is Anglophile, a class that loves us. So we set up schools. Then, okay, set up schools. But setting up a school may work against you because you are giving your knowledge, your technology, your methods to these people who don't love you. They will use those same methods against you. Said, no, we need to do something more. The subject of English literature, actually, according to Professor Bakari, was invented in India. There was no subject in British schools at that time called English literature. It was invented in India that the Indians will be reading Shakespeare, stories, plays, acting some of the plays, but these things about the English lifestyle, how the English live, how they love, how they eat, how they talk. So they wanted that this class being created be Anglophile. They admire the English way of life. And believe me, those of you who are old enough, they were successful. Because until today in South Asia, there are still many people who are Anglophile. They look up to that, they love it. So literature was a tool used for political purposes, and apparently did succeed with that group of people who went to these special schools and who still go to these special schools. They are very Anglophile, they're very westernized, but the tool used was English literature. That is why in our program, we don't use the word decolonization, but we use the word integration of knowledge, Islamization of knowledge. We do work on literature. If I had time, I would have shown you some of the books that we have published in Bangladesh, in Malaysia, also in East Africa. People are trying to critique, first of all, the English literature studies. They point out that this is not English literature only. This is culture. This is colonizing the mind, directing the mind, changing people. And then they go even further. They are now beginning to write literature, English literature, but from the Islamic perspective. So I would like to end this very briefly by saying that, yes, colonization of the social sciences happened a lot. And I've given an example of English literature and their efforts to decolonize, and their efforts all over the world to decolonize knowledge, to make sure that we keep only what is pure and we put in what is revealed. So this process of integration of knowledge, or Islamic integration of knowledge, is the challenge of the hour. So I would like to end by asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless our deliberations here, that the ideas that we have talked about can be taken back by the participants, and they do something about it. It's not something hearing, but they do something about this idea. Allahumma ij'al jam'ana hadha jam'an marhuma wa tafarruqna min ba'di tafarruqan mu'ayyadan ma'suma wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
Jazakumullah khair. Thank you very much, Professor Kisuli, for sharing your thoughts.
Jazakallah khair.
The recording of this session will be available on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel. And if you have any comments and questions, you can send us email. The email is available in the chat window, the email address. And we look forward to seeing you again next week with another interesting lecture, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.